let's start. So, as you can see, my presentation will be on Mycenaean lower towns and the use of theory of entanglement in the study of their settlement network. And I would like to discuss here some preliminary thoughts, assumptions, and state of research regarding my PhD project, which focuses on Mycenaean lower towns. This is the common name assigned to settlements surrounding Mycenaean palaces, which were, however, much less investigated than the palaces itself. The data is usually dispersed among various publications and is based mostly on archaeological surveys and limited amount of excavated material. The goal of my project is to collect all the data on known lower towns and present a new model of their interpretation with the use of the theory of entanglement, with all the consequences of this fact, including the geographical and chronological span of the work. One of the key questions of the project is about nature of urbanization in the Mycenaean culture. Crucial definition here regards urbanization itself. I accept systematic and relational vision of this process, defined within a closed system and focused on development of functional and structural differences between various settlements. So urbanization, for me, is not a moment when the settlement acquires some list of features, like some list of functions or something like that. It's more about creating a division, internal division inside the settlement, when it has different parts having different functions, and also division inside the whole settlement network when we have settlements which have different functions than other settlements. This is what urbanization means for me, not that we have trade, for example, or fortifications around the settlements. Outlining the role of lower towns as economic and social background of centers of power will allow the project to be focused exactly on relational and functional aspects of urbanization, because urbanization understood in this way undoubtedly took place in the Mycenaean culture as it faced a gradual centralization of administration and economy around the palaces, which led to distinction of their role in the settlement network and development of lower towns. Analysis of sociotopography and mutual dependence will lead to linking the palace and the lower town within one system, which may be called a palatial town. In this view, only this dualistic layout of entangled objects, so palace plus the lower town, acquires urban features. However, the study is yet on a very early state, which, together with the time limits of the presentation, forces me to focus on various selected aspects of the project. So I'll first very quickly introduce you to the theory of entanglement, which probably is known to most of you, especially when you think about the subject of the conference. But nevertheless, I will very briefly introduce you, and then also briefly present all the sites included in the study. And after that, I will use two of them to discuss two case studies of two aspects of the project. So Pylos will be used to discuss the entanglement theory, so the methodological background and how it can be used, and Dimini in Thessaly will be used to discuss potential to analyze urbanization processes in Mycenaean culture. And at the end, I will present some wider context of the project, so the meso and macro scale comparative contexts. So theory of entanglement. The theory was presented and explained by Ian Hodder in his 2012 book, Entangled, an Archaeology of the Relationships Between Humans and Things, and it's a syncretic theoretical construct which links together numerous scientific social theories created in the last decades. It is based on the idea of open, constantly growing net of entangled humans and things, linked together with multiple categories of often unconscious mutual dependence. Those links work in all possible directions. Thus we can find human-human dependence, but also human-thing, thing-human, and thing-thing relations. So all the possible options. Especially noteworthy is Hodder's explanation of the complex network of relations between people and things, while maintaining the practical, technical, and material dimensions of these relationships. Universality and the broad perspective of entanglement theory make it an extremely effective tool for analyzing any system or network that binds together different sets of factors. chronological dimension of each entanglement, which always had the entanglement always has a tendency for constant growth, both in range and internal complexity, is also crucial for this theoretical approach. Development of the entanglement leads to limiting the ability of entangled humans to consciously modify the network. The growing number of mutually dependent humans and things trapped within the system prevents even most influential individuals from controlling the entire entanglement. As the entity, it can be untied due to multiple internal or external factors, which can eliminate its key objects, causing the collapse of the entire network of dependence. This historical trajectory is universal for all systems created by humans, including the Mycenaean culture, which has managed to form at least two wide-range entanglements, palatial and post-palatial. Hodder's theory would also be particularly useful while taking the interpretations to the higher level and analyzing Mycenaean lower towns from different, broader perspectives. Each entanglement is always nested in a larger entanglement, which gathers all the local systems of the same pattern. Thus, each lower town entanglement is a part of the overall Mycenaean culture entanglement, which can be seen as a part of at least two larger, even larger entities. So the entanglement of palatial societies of late Bronze Age Eastern Mediterranean and entanglement of the prehistoric Bronze Age Europe. And in this aspect of the theory, so this linking of systems, geographically creating a wider geographical context, Hodder mostly uses world system theory, which is now usually named as world system analysis. And I believe this needs no explanation. I mean, you all know what this is. And this is an example of how he incorporated into his theory multiple ideas like world system analysis. So entanglement theory in its basis, it's a syncretic idea linking various things. It's not that original itself, but it's very useful in terms of linking various ideas. And here you have just two visualizations from his book, when you can see how he presents the entanglement of the in Çatalhöyük. On the right we have the, I think, pottery entanglement, and on the left the visualization with some entanglement of some ritual context. This is just to show you how it can be presented, but the most important thing here to remember is that it is not really possible to visualize an entanglement. Both of those pictures, these are simplified visions, and he writes it himself, that it's not possible to present all the factors. And if you try to visualize it, you will always have to simplify. And this is also what I will have to do, so that's why I talk about it. Okay, so Mycenaean lower towns. The main range of analyzed data will come from all known Mycenaean lower towns located on the Greek mainland. Those are sites of Dimini, Thebes, Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos. Palaces at Orchomenos, Athens, Midea, and Agios Vasilios lack known remnants of settlements surrounding the Mycenaean lower towns, but the others has to be eliminated from the study because we lack the data, basically. And also noteworthy, each of them kind of represents a region, with Mycenaean Tiryns representing more or less the same region of Argolis, and then Pylos representing Messenia, Thebes, Boeotia, and Dimini, Thessaly. And also here we lack, for sure we lack Laconia because of the lack of data from Agios Vasilios, and Attica. Okay, so all the sites in the scope of the project have been tested in an invasive or non-invasive way, or a combination of those methods. The basic scientific needs are a synthesis of published research results, often dispersed in many publications, and a comparative analysis of the sites on both regional and trans-regional level. Subsequently, reanalysis of available archaeological data and its reinterpretation in a new context can bring a verification of some of the features ascribed so far to various sites. A key part of the data which demands a careful evaluation is, for example, the size of the site, usually determined on the basis of a distribution of ceramic material on the surface. And it was analyzed during archaeological surface surveys of diverse methodology and objectives. And, for example, here it seems possible that waste disposal zones surrounding the actual settlements were often included within the estimated site size. So this is a kind of an example of a problem which we can meet while taking care of this. Okay, so now we will go very briefly through those 5 sites. Like we have no time to go into detail, but just to briefly show you those 5 key sites. So the site of Dimini in Thessaly, excavations led here to discovery of palatial, so-called, earlier called a palatial building consisting of 2 megarons with no fortifications separating it from the settlement. It was directly surrounded by densely packed buildings with a clear plan. Houses had diversified sizes and functions, and one of them was interpreted as a cult-related building. Dimini is to the northernmost Mycenaean palace, which, together with the settlements surrounding it, has to be analyzed in the context of peripheral zones and intercultural processes occurring in them. On the other hand, a large part of the settlement being excavated leads to recognizing it as one of the most important for the project. Due to extensive non-invasive geophysical research preceding the excavations, the site was tested in a thorough and systematic way. And it's noteworthy here that the palatial building is not longer a palatial building, but we will come back to it, because as I said, Dimini will be used as a case study later, so we'll come back to it later. Thebes. Late Bronze Age remains from Thebes in Boeotia, presumably one of the biggest Mycenaean centers, are exceptionally dispersed and poorly preserved, because of multiple layers of younger residues and an extensive modern town on top of it. It points towards a need of exceptional caution during interpreting those data and the possibility of verification of many assumptions accepted in Aegean archaeology so far, such as the size of the settlement and density of its buildings. So far, it is said that it was a relatively large, possibly around 30 hectares, and densely built settlement surrounding the palace located on the hill, Cadmeia Hill. Thebes are also characterized with a high number of archaeological material dated to Middle Helladic period, which makes them a site crucial for analysis of origins and beginnings of lower towns. Because as I said, Entanglement forces us to look at the chronological span also. So it's not only presenting one moment in history when the lower town existed, but also its development from the very origins to the collapse. Mycenae. A similarly large settlement surrounded a citadel in Mycenae in the Argolith. On the basis of a surface survey, it was established to cover around 30 hectares also. The settlement was centered around a fortified acropolis, on which the palace and various and most probably had also functions connected to trade and administration. The latter is pointed by seals and linear B tablets found inside them. On the other hand, houses located a little further from the citadel were noticeably poorer when it comes to material remains. And a lot more could be said about Mycenae, but as I said, briefly. Tiryns. Tiryns, the most thoroughly examined, and it has to be said being here, and still being examined, lower town surrounded the palace at Tiryns, located only 15 kilometers from Mycenae. The Acropolis of Tiryns itself has a complex inside structure with lower and upper citadel and a dynamic nature of relations between them. It was fortified with multiple lines of walls, which are well preserved to this day. Numerous residues surround the citadel from the west and form densely packed and well-organized settlement estimated to cover even 25 hectares of land. Tiryns also provides a clear evidence for reorganization and further development of the site after the palace itself was destroyed, so in period LH3C. And as I said previously about the chronological span, about the origins, that we have to look also to the origins of each lower town. So as the same comes also to when we talk about the collapse and the LH3C development. So that's why Tiryns is particularly important, as it provides a lot of data for that period. Pylos. The southernmost site in scope of the project is Pylos in Mycenaean. Their so-called Palace of Nestor is located on an acropolis clearly dominating the area. It was long believed that it lacked an actual fortification wall, although this view has changed over the years, mostly due to a geophysical research conducted during the Pylos Regional Archaeological Project. The palace is said to be the best preserved Mycenaean residence in terms of visible plan of the complex, and included among numerous objects a massive archive of linear B tablets with over 1,000 pieces, and that makes it very useful in comparison to other sites. The size of a settlement surrounding the palace was estimated at about 14-15 hectares on the basis of solely archaeological survey and the analysis of ceramic material distribution. However, the thorough macroscopic research of collected fragments, together with their detailed relative dating, allowed to examine the dynamics of growth of Pylos settlement and an attempt to correlate those with the development of regional settlement system and gradual formation of Mycenaean state in Messenia. So even though here we lack data from excavations, but the surface survey was detailed enough, and the analysis of the material which followed was also careful enough that we have quite a detailed picture of how the settlement grow, and that's what we can see on the lower picture. And the upper picture is the palace itself, obviously. And since 2015, the site is a subject of a new research excavations realized within the framework of the Palace of Nestor at Pylos excavations projects, of which I'm a participant, and so I'm lucky enough to work there. But unfortunately, probably I will have to finish my PhD before they publish anything. So I can't use any of that. But I hope that the future results of those excavations will somehow fit into my my models. Oh, already? Okay. How much time do I have? 5 minutes. Okay. So, 2 case studies, as I said. First one, Pylos. So this is to show that I already have some experience in constructing models based on the entanglement theory. It was gained during writing my master's thesis, focused on the system of strategies of pottery acquisition and ceramic industry control by the palace at Pylos. This system was presented as an entanglement involving palatial elite and palace personnel, pottery producers, ceramic vessels themselves, as well as residents of the lower town involved in the consumption of pottery in the context of communal feasts. This entanglement is part of a larger system covering the whole settlement in Pylos, and as such is part of the already performed research that preceded this. So we can say that some little part of the lower town in Pylos entanglement is already created. I used the data from published literature of macroscopic analysis of pottery, chemical analysis by Michael Galati and linear B tablets, and created, this is a visualization of the entanglement on the plan of the palace, and here is the 2-pillar pottery acquisition system created. No time, so I won't go into any details. If you have questions later, I would be pleased to answer. But this was created with the use of theory of entanglement. Okay, and now Dimini. So on the example of Dimini, we can discuss internal functional and architectural division of the settlement, which is one of the key aspects of urbanization understood in a relational way. On this simplified plan, we can see the one on the left. We can see the excavated part of the settlement divided between the residential and administrative parts, with the latter one being centered around the double megaron complex, the so-called administrative center. as I said, it's not a palace anymore because of multiple doubts about its nature. So now it's usually called an administrative center. But it has to be mentioned here that this division is one proposition, one interpretation, but by Pantu, published in 2010. But in 2016, the Professor Adrimis Ismail, the excavator herself, she proposed slightly different division of the settlement, with the upper part being somehow administrative and cult-related, with Megaron-like buildings, and the lower part being the residential area. So the road, which you can see in the middle, would be what divides the settlement, not the palace and the rest, the administrative building. I'm sorry. The central building is now seen rather as a communal building of administrative, production, religious, and storage functions. However, it is still undoubtful that it had a separate function within the settlement and was socially and physically divided from the rest of it, which is pointed also by the presence of a monumental gateway. You have the gateway there. The latter one opens up on a crossroad of two main roads delimited by stone walls. Those exceptional examples of Mycenaean construction techniques seem not only to connect the central buildings with the region, but also define the urbanistic planned layout of the settlement. Possible existence of regional urbanized settlement network in Thessaly can be discussed here, with three-level hierarchy of sites and functional division between them. So this is purely hypothetical, so we don't have to be attached too much to this idea, but it was already proposed, and it seems reasonable to see here in Thessaly the three-level hierarchy with the so-called metropoly of the Bay of Volos, with those three sites of Dimini, Pevkakia, and Castro. And those three sites, they would create one, as I said, metropoly, because it's impossible so far to see any of them as dominating the other ones. The relations between them are unclear. So this is one idea, that they could cooperate and create one big urbanized area. And then we have two other sites, Petra and Velestino, which would act as intra-regional trade centers, and they would help to concentrate the resources. And then we have a bunch of smaller sites around them. However, it has to be stressed out here that Dimini and Thessaly as the region is by no means a standard example of a Mycenaean palatial town and regional settlement network. The site itself is a very specific and, first of all, lacks an actual palace. The way in which it developed together with the shape of the entire network is possibly caused by a peripheral nature of Thessaly in the Mycenaean world. Despite the complete Mycenaization of the coastal region, not later than during the LH382 period, the rest of the rest of Thessaly remained only partially acculturated and was a border or even a frontier zone for the Mycenaean world. Even the coastal region, defined as the core area by Brian Foyer in his analysis, shows multiple irregularities in comparison to other Mycenaean regions. Like the palace itself, we have bigger toloi, there is very small amount of weapons in burials and also other points. So maybe the shore of the bay is a core of Mycenaean Thessaly, but still a periphery of the Mycenaean world. So this part of the data should be used carefully and analyzed carefully, but it's still because the context is very specific. But the amount of data, on the other hand, is so big that it would be a pity not to use it with the certain care in mind. Okay, I guess I have no time at all. So the next state of the research will take us to two. I don't know why it is broken there, but so it should take us to two levels of analysis in meso and macro context. So the first, the meso context, would we would need to join all the entanglements of each lower towns which previously were created, and then add to them the first comparative context with Crete and Western Anatolia, where we can find a Mycenaean settlement, which the urbanized character which they have, it does not originate from the Mycenaean culture, but from the older traditions. Like Knossos is urbanized not because of Mycenaeans, but because of older Minoan traditions. And the same, Miletus in Western Anatolia is urbanized because of earlier Anatolian traditions, not that Mycenaeans came and create an urban context. But still, it should be used and compared with the lower towns, and those this creates as a meso context, so the overall Mycenaean settlement network, and then we have macro context, so the other cultural entities which we can try to compare our network, and those are basically divided, as I said before, into two main worlds. So the Near Eastern palatial societies. Here I pointed Hatti Empire, Syro-Palestine, and the New Kingdom in Egypt. And then we have the Bronze Age Europe. This is a subjective choice of my own. What would be the best to compare with Mycenaean settlement network? But obviously there could be many other cultural entities there. But I chose Elargar, Alpine Hillfords, Unietyce culture, Ottomani Fuse-Sabone culture, Vatia culture, and Castellieri on Istria. Sure. So I want to stress that this is not to point any similarities on. Pointing similarities and differences between those contexts is the secondary objective. It is more about showing the uniqueness of Mycenaean system and how it functioned in its world system, because that's what use of entanglement theory forces us to do. But it's not to show that, for example, Mycenaeans inspired Europe and themselves were inspired by Near Eastern empires. That's a secondary thing here. If we can show anything like this. This is some summary with micro, mesos, and macro scale, which was already presented. This is bibliography. Thank you very much. Sorry that it takes so long.
Thanks for the presentation. Okay, sorry for pressuring, but it's only for us to make the program. Is there any question? I think we have time for one question.
I think it's a pity that due to time constraints you couldn't explain us how entanglement theory works in the case of Pylos. So I would like to give you the opportunity through my question to do exactly this. Can you return to this chart and explain us how it works? Yes, exactly.
This one or this one? This one. Okay. So here we have a, let's say, set of dependencies. So basically what entanglement is, the set of dependencies. With the Pylos as the core of the entanglement, because this is not like all the pottery entanglement, but the entanglement of pottery acquisition system. So the pottery is collected by the Pylos. So this is why this is the core of the entanglement. And then we have two pillars. One with palatial contracts, which with one super important, the most important contract between the royal potter and the Vanax, the Mycenaean king. And this served to provide thousands of vessels, mostly for communal feasts. And this link was crucial for the work of the whole system, because this was not only for the daily use, but the organization of communal feasts was crucial for maintaining the social system itself. So that's why it was not only that the Vanax, kind of helped the royal potter, but also the other way around. The Vanax, as the key element of the social system, he was responsible for maintaining it. So he also relied on the work of the royal potter. Like without him, he wouldn't be able to maintain the system. So that's why with the dependence worked here both way, and this can be transferred to all the other dependencies. We have except from the Royal Potter contract, we have also other contracts to brokers and itinerant craftsmen, and we have some examples of those contracts. And then we have the whole second pillar with taxation of regional workshops and forcing them to provide small amounts of pottery. And this was not made to really control the industry. The reason here was to input a control over the industry, but not really, like they don't need to do it. They don't need those vessels. The royal potter himself, he perfectly could bring them the vessels, but they did it to fit the system. The core idea of the entanglement is fittingness. That the humans we have the tendency to create systems in which everything fits together. So they need to do it. They need to force the potters around the palace to provide them some vessels, just to show that we can do it. We can force you. And then we have the whole upper part of the schematic presentation with where the pottery went and how it was used. And this, as I said previously, works both ways. So all those functions, they depend on potters, as potters depend on those functions. Okay.